Ji-hoon Kim stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council and felt very small. The chamber was built for beings much larger than humans, and the ceiling disappeared into darkness above his head. 12 massive seats formed a circle around the center where he waited. Each seat held an alien being that looked down at him like he was something they found on their shoe. The Vorthak representative sparkled like broken glass in the dim light. Its crystal body made sharp sounds when it moved, and those sounds hurt human ears. The Nethrim floated in its gas cloud like fog with eyes. The Zelani clicked and buzzed with its insect mouth while its compound eyes never blinked. Each alien species had ruled parts of the galaxy for thousands of years, before humans even learned to make fire. Ji-hoon had been the human ambassador for 3 years now. He came to these meetings every month, and every month was the same. The aliens talked about important things while humans waited. They made decisions that affected billions of people while treating human concerns like jokes. Today would be different, though. Today, Ji-hoon had proof of something terrible. The human wishes to speak, said the Vorthak in its voice like breaking glass. The other aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. How amusing! What simple problem troubles the younglings today? Ji-hoon held up a datapad. His hands were steady even though his heart was beating fast. We have discovered illegal mining, operations on 7 human colony worlds. The evidence shows council members are taking rare minerals without permission. This violates the galactic trade agreement that we all signed. The Nethrim's cloud shifted and pulsed. Impossible. The council does not steal from lesser species. Perhaps the humans simply do not understand what they have agreed to. I understand perfectly, Ji-hoon said. His voice was calm, but Mira Park could see the anger in his eyes. She sat in the human observer section with the other staff members. She had worked with Ji-hoon long enough to know when he was about to lose. His patience. The Zelani made clicking sounds. Show us this supposed evidence. Ji-hoon activated his datapad, and holographic images appeared in the air above him. The images showed mining ships with council markings digging into the surface of human worlds. They showed transport vessels carrying away tons of precious metals. They showed alien workers stripping valuable resources from planets that belonged to human families. These operations began 6 months ago, Ji-hoon explained. They happen at night, when most humans are sleeping. The mining ships use stealth technology to avoid detection, but our deep space monitors caught them anyway. The 12 alien counselors looked at the evidence. Some made dismissive sounds. Others whispered to each other in languages humans could not understand. The Vorthak's crystal body rang like a bell when it moved forward. Even if this evidence is real, the Vorthak said, the humans clearly do not understand galactic law. These worlds contain resources that are vital to advanced civilizations. Primitive species cannot be expected to use such materials properly. The Council takes these resources for the good of the galaxy. Mira felt sick to her stomach. She had spent 5 years studying alien cultures and learning their languages. She thought she understood how the Council worked. But this was worse than she had feared. They were not just ignoring human rights. They were stealing from human colonies and calling it legal. The trade agreement says all species have rights to their own worlds, Ji-hoon said. His voice was getting harder. It says no one can take resources without permission. You wrote these laws yourselves. The Nethrim's gas cloud grew darker. Laws must be interpreted by those wise enough to understand them. The humans have been members of this council for only 50 years. We have guided galactic civilization for millennia. Trust us to know what is best. Admiral Dong-Yun Lee sat in the back of the human section. He commanded the human fleet that protected their space near the council station. He had fought in 3 wars to defend human colonies from pirates and raiders. Now he was learning that the biggest thieves were the ones who made the laws. What about compensation? Ji-hoon asked. If the council believes they have the right to take these resources, then they should pay for them. The families on those worlds need those minerals to build their cities and power their homes. The alien counselors made more dismissive sounds. The Zelani clicked its mandibles together. Payment? For resources taken from worlds that barely qualify as civilized? The humans should be grateful that advanced species find any value in their primitive holdings. That was when Ji-hoon realized the truth. The council had never seen humans as equals. They had never planned to treat them fairly. For 50 years, humans had tried to be good members of the galactic community. They had followed the rules and respected the laws and tried to learn from older civilizations. But to the Council, they were just children playing at being adults. "We want justice," Ji-hoon said. "We want the mining to stop, and we want payment for what has already been taken." The Vorthak made a sound like shattering crystal that might have been laughter. "Justice? The humans speak of justice? You have been given the privilege of joining our council. You have been allowed to trade with civilizations far beyond your understanding. You have been granted protection under our laws. What more justice could primitive beings expect?" Mira watched as other human staff members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Everyone could feel the tension growing in the Great Hall. The aliens were not even pretending to take human concerns seriously anymore. They were treating Ji-hoon like a child who did not understand how the adult world worked. "Then we request a formal vote," Ji-hoon said. "Let the council decide if these mining operations are legal under galactic law." The 12 aliens looked at each other. This was unusual. Humans rarely forced formal votes because they always lost. With 12 council members and humans having only one vote, they could never win. But Ji-hoon was determined to make them say it officially. "Very well," the Vorthak said. "We vote on whether council resource acquisition from human worlds violates galactic law. All in favor of the human position." Only Ji-hoon raised his hand. All opposed? 11 alien hands or claws or tentacles rose into the air. "The motion fails," the Vorthak announced. "The council finds no violation of galactic law. These mining operations will continue as necessary for the good of galactic civilization." But the aliens were not finished. The Nethrim's gas cloud pulsed with bright colors. "In fact, we believe stronger measures are needed. The humans have shown today that they do not understand their place in galactic society. They make accusations against their betters and demand things they have not earned." The Zilani buzzed agreement. "We propose the guidance protocols, new laws to help young species learn proper behavior." Ji-hoon felt cold fear creep up his spine. "What kind of guidance?" "The Vorthak's crystal body rang with pleasure. "First, all human military forces will be placed under direct council oversight. You clearly cannot be trusted to use weapons responsibly. Second, human expansion will be limited to worlds that the council approves. No more wild colonization of valuable systems. Third, all human technology development must be reviewed by council scientists before implementation. We cannot allow dangerous experiments by inexperienced species." The Great Hall fell silent. Mira could hear her own heartbeat in the quiet. These were not guidance protocols. They were chains designed to keep humanity under alien control forever. "You are turning us into slaves," Ji-hoon said quietly. "We are making you into proper galactic citizens," the Vorthak replied. "All in favor of the guidance protocols?" 11 hands rose again. Only Ji-hoon kept his hand down. "The guidance protocols are now galactic law," the Vorthak announced. "The humans will comply within 60 standard days or face economic sanctions." Ji-hoon stood very still for a long moment. Around him, the aliens were already talking about other business as if humans no longer mattered. They had made their decision, and now they expected humans to accept it like good children. But Ji-hoon was not a child, and humans were not pets to be managed by their betters. He gathered his papers with careful movements. He picked up his datapad and turned off the holographic projector. He walked toward the exit with steady steps while 12 alien beings watched him go. At the doorway, he stopped and turned back to face the council. "We came here in good faith. We believed in cooperation between equals, but you have shown us what you really think of that cooperation." The Vorthak made another glass-breaking sound. "Surely the humans are not threatening to leave. Where would you go, little species? The galaxy belongs to your betters." Ji-hoon looked at each alien counselor in turn. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold as space. "The galaxy is about to learn what humans do when we are no longer welcome at the table." Then he walked out of the Great Hall and left the 12 alien beings to their ancient arrogance. Behind him, Mira and Admiral Dong-yun and the other human staff followed in silence. None of them spoke until they reached their ship. But in the quiet of space, Admiral Dong-hyun activated his secure communicator and sent a single coded message to the human fleet. The message was short and simple, but it would change everything. The message said, "Come home." Captain Suyung Choi received the coded message while her colony ship was orbiting the planet New Sol. The message was simple, but she understood what it meant. After 50 years of trying to be good galactic citizens, the humans were going home. All of them. She called her senior officers to the bridge and showed them the message. Commander Hyunwoo Nam was her intelligence officer, and he had been expecting this day for months. Chief Engineer Yoon-ha Yoon looked sad, but not surprised. They had all heard the reports from the council meetings. They knew this was coming. How long do we have? Soo-young asked. The evacuation order gives us 90 days, Hyunwoo replied. But Command wants us to be ready to leave in 30 if things go bad fast. Soo-young looked out at the planet below. New Sol had been a human colony for 20 years. 50,000 people lived there now. They had built cities and farms and schools. They had made the planet into a home. Now they had to abandon everything and run before the council decided to take their world too. What about the infrastructure? Yoon-ha asked. We have power plants and communication arrays and medical facilities. Do we just leave them for the aliens? No, Hyunwoo said quietly. We take everything or we destroy it. Command is very clear about this. We do not leave anything useful behind. The evacuation began immediately. Human ships throughout the galaxy received similar orders, and they all responded the same way. They stopped what they were doing and started going home. But this was not a panicked retreat. This was something the humans had planned for years without telling anyone. Admiral Dong-yun, Lee coordinated the military withdrawal from his flagship. Human battle groups that had been stationed throughout Council space began moving toward the galactic rim. They moved slowly and carefully like they were just conducting routine patrols. The Council military forces watched them go but did not interfere. The aliens thought the humans were just repositioning their fleets, but the humans were not repositioning. They were leaving forever. Dr. Jiwon Yang ran the Human Medical Research Station in the Vorthak system. For 15 years she had worked with alien scientists to develop new treatments for diseases that affected multiple species. Her laboratory had created vaccines that saved millions of lives. Now she was packing everything into storage containers and preparing to leave. The Vorthak scientists came to her laboratory and asked what she was doing. We are relocating our research, Jiwon told them. Human Command has decided we need better facilities. But your work here is important, the lead Vorthak scientist said. Its crystal voice sounded confused. You cannot simply abandon decades of research. We are not abandoning anything, Jiwon replied. We are taking it with us. She did not tell them that the new research facilities were being built in the void between galaxies where no council ships could follow. She did not tell them that human science was about to advance faster than ever before without alien oversight and interference. She just smiled and kept packing. The same scene played out across the galaxy. Human doctors and engineers and researchers packed their equipment and prepared to leave. They had been working in alien space for decades, but they had never really trusted their hosts. Everything important had backup copies stored in secure human databases. Every critical technology had human-only components that could be removed when necessary. Tai Hyung-shin managed the largest human trading post in Council space. His facility processed goods from 100 different worlds and employed thousands of alien workers. The trading post was so important that several alien governments depended on it to keep their economies stable. When Taehyung announced he was closing the facility, the alien managers panicked. You cannot close this operation, the Nethrim supervisor told him. Our trade agreements require you to maintain services. Our trade agreements were made with the assumption that humans would be treated as equals, Taehyung replied. That assumption was incorrect. He began shutting down the trading systems one by one. The quantum computers that tracked millions of transactions went dark. The transport coordinators that managed shipping routes between star systems stopped working. The currency exchange programs that allowed different species to trade with each other simply vanished. Within days, the local economy began to collapse. Alien merchants who had depended on human systems found themselves unable to process orders or track shipments. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades suddenly broke down. The aliens tried to restart the systems themselves, but they discovered that the humans had built everything using technologies that other species did not understand. The council sent angry messages demanding that humans resume their duties. They threatened economic sanctions and military action. But the humans did not respond to threats anymore. They just kept packing and leaving. Captain Sungjin Kang commanded a human exploration vessel at the very edge of the galaxy. His ship was part of a small fleet that studied the dark space between galaxies where no stars shone. The work was dangerous and lonely, but it had revealed amazing discoveries about the nature of space itself. When the evacuation order came, Sung Jin was not surprised. His ship had been preparing for this day longer than most. They had built secret bases in the void where no alien sensors could detect them. They had tested technologies that the council thought were impossible. They were ready to show the galaxy what humans could really do when they stopped asking for permission. "Signal the construction fleet," Sung Jin told his communications officer. "Tell them to begin Phase 2. Deep in the darkness between galaxies, massive human ships began to move. They were not the small exploration vessels that alien scouts sometimes spotted at the galactic rim. These were construction ships the size of asteroids carrying technologies that could reshape reality itself. They had been waiting in the cold darkness for years. Now they could finally begin their real work. The aliens began to notice that something was wrong when their own systems started failing. The Zilani discovered that their atmospheric processors were shutting down one by one. These machines kept their hive cities supplied with breathable air, but they had been maintained by human engineers for decades. Without human expertise, the processors began to fail and entire cities faced suffocation. The Vorthak found that their crystalline matrices were developing flaws. Their entire species reproduced by growing new crystal bodies in carefully controlled environments. Human scientists had provided the harmonic generators that kept these environments stable. Now the generators were going silent, and new Vorthak could not form properly. The Nethrim gas clouds began to disperse uncontrollably. They had never understood how human atmospheric containment systems worked, but they had relied on them to maintain their body cohesion in different environments. Without these systems, many Nethrim were losing the ability to hold themselves together. Across the galaxy, similar disasters struck every species that had worked with humans. The aliens had always assumed that human technology was primitive and simple. They had never bothered to learn how it actually worked. Now they discovered that humans had been quietly maintaining systems that were far more advanced than anyone realized. The council called emergency sessions to discuss the crisis. They sent desperate messages to human leaders offering negotiations and compromises. They promised better treatment and equal representation. They even offered to make humans the senior partners in some council operations. But no human answered their calls. Admiral Dong-hyun Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the last human transport leave council space. Behind them, the great civilizations of the galaxy were beginning to crumble as systems failed and knowledge walked away. Ahead of them lay the infinite darkness between galaxies, where humanity would build something new. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "We are receiving multiple distress calls from council systems. They are requesting immediate assistance with critical infrastructure failures." "Acknowledge the messages," Dong-hyun replied, "but send no response." He turned to look out at the stars one last time. For 50 years, humans had tried to be part of this galactic community. They had shared their knowledge and offered their friendship, and asked only to be treated with respect. Instead, they had been dismissed and insulted and finally enslaved by beings who thought they were superior. Now those beings would learn what they had lost. They would discover that the young species they had treated like children were actually the adults in the relationship. They would realize too late that humanity had been holding their civilization together with quiet competence and patient engineering. But humans were done being patient. They were done being quiet. They were going to build something better in the darkness between stars where no ancient alien council could tell them what they were allowed to dream. The last human ship left the galaxy and the darkness swallowed them completely. Behind them, the aliens they had tried so hard to please began the long process of learning how to survive without the people they had driven away. The galaxy would never be the same again. 6 months had passed since the humans left, and the galaxy was falling apart. Changmin-O watched it all happen from his observation post in the dark space between galaxies. He had been a cultural researcher before the evacuation, and now he was documenting the collapse of civilizations that had ruled for thousands of years. His sensors could detect everything that happened in the galaxy they had left behind. He watched alien ships struggle with navigation systems that no longer worked properly. He saw trade routes collapse as coordination networks failed. He recorded the desperate attempts of ancient species to repair technologies they had never bothered to understand. The Vorthak were dying. Their crystal bodies needed specific sound frequencies to grow and reproduce, but the harmonic generators that created these frequencies had been built by humans. Without replacement parts and maintenance, the generators were breaking down one by one. Each failed generator meant fewer new Vorthak could be born. The crystal beings who had dismissed humans as primitive younglings were now facing extinction within a single generation. The irony is perfect, Changmin wrote in his research log. They called us children, but they were completely dependent on us to continue their species. The Zilani hive cities were suffocating in their own atmosphere. Human engineers had designed air recycling systems that could handle the complex chemistry of insect respiration. These systems had worked flawlessly for decades, while the Zilani focused on other things. Now the air in their cities was becoming toxic, and they had no idea how to fix the problem. Changmin tracked the emergency signals coming from major Zilani worlds. The insect beings were trying everything they could think of to restart their life support systems. They had sent technical teams to abandoned human facilities hoping to find instruction manuals or spare parts. They found empty buildings and removed equipment. The humans had taken everything when they left. The Nethrim were perhaps the worst, affected of all the council species. Their gas cloud bodies required careful atmospheric management to maintain cohesion in different environments. Human scientists had provided compact containment generators that allowed Nethrim to travel safely between worlds. Without these devices, many Nethrim were trapped on their home worlds. Others, who tried to travel between different atmospheric conditions, simply dispersed and died. But the infrastructure failures were just the beginning. The real disaster was the complete breakdown of galactic coordination. For 50 years, humans had served as translators and mediators between species that could barely communicate with each other. Human linguists understood languages that other aliens found impossible to learn. Human diplomats had prevented dozens of wars by finding compromises that satisfied all parties. Now, ancient enemies were remembering old grievances. The Vorthak and Zilani had fought bitter territorial wars before humans arrived to mediate their disputes. Without human peacekeepers, those conflicts were starting again. Border skirmishes erupted as both species tried to claim resource-rich systems that the other side also wanted. Yuri Kim led a small group of humans who had chosen to remain hidden in the galaxy. They lived in concealed stations built inside asteroid fields where alien sensors could not detect them. Their job was to observe and report, but never to interfere. The lesson had to be complete. She watched as Zilani and Vorthak fleets met in battle over a mining system that both species claimed. The fight was chaotic and wasteful. Neither side understood modern space combat tactics. They had relied on human military advisors for so long that their own officers had forgotten how to plan effective operations. Both fleets are using outdated formations, Yuri reported to the hidden human command center. Neither side seems to understand how to coordinate their attacks. They are just flying at each other and shooting randomly. The battle lasted 3 days and achieved nothing. Both fleets retreated after suffering heavy casualties. The contested star system remained empty, while both species rebuilt their forces and planned new attacks. It was exactly the kind of pointless conflict that human mediators had prevented for decades. Meanwhile, in the dark between galaxies, the real work was beginning. Wujin Park supervised construction projects that operated on a scale the galaxy had never imagined. Human engineers were building artificial star systems from raw matter collected in the cosmic void. They were creating new forms of energy that did not require existing stars or planets. The humans had discovered technologies during their time in council space that the aliens had forbidden them to develop. Rules about dimensional manipulation and matter compression had limited human research for decades. Now those rules no longer applied. Human science was advancing at a speed that would have terrified the Council if they had known about it. "We have completed the first stellar forge," Wu Jin reported to the Human Leadership Council. "We can now create stable stars of any size and composition. The second forge will be online within 30 days. Humans were not just building new technology. They were building new worlds from scratch. They were taking the empty darkness between galaxies and filling it with wonders that no natural evolution could have produced. They were creating a civilization that did not depend on finding habitable planets or fighting over limited resources." Back in the galaxy, the Council was holding emergency meetings every day. The great chamber where they had once dismissed human concerns was now filled with panicked alien voices. They had sent hundreds of messages to the last known human coordinates begging for help. Every message had been ignored. "We must find them," the lead Vorthak insisted. Its crystal voice was cracked with stress fractures. "Our species cannot survive much longer without their technology." "They have vanished completely," the Nethrim representative replied. Its gas cloud was dimmer than before, and parts of it were drifting away. "Our best scouts have searched the entire galactic rim. There is no trace of human ships anywhere." The Zilani buzzed with frustration. "Perhaps they have hidden themselves in deep space. We should send exploration fleets to search between the stars." But the aliens had no idea how to search the vast emptiness between galaxies. Their technology was designed for travel within star systems where there were landmarks and energy sources. The cold void where humans had built their new civilization was as alien to them as the bottom of an ocean. Some Council species tried to reverse engineer the human technology they had left behind. They found broken pieces of equipment and tried to understand how it worked. But human engineering was more sophisticated than they had realized. Every device contained quantum processors and dimensional components that required manufacturing techniques the aliens did not possess. The Zilani found a damaged atmospheric processor in one of their abandoned cities. They took it apart piece by piece, hoping to understand its design. What they found horrified them. The device used principles of molecular manipulation that their science said were impossible. Humans had been casually using technologies that alien physicists thought were purely theoretical. "How long have they possessed these capabilities?" the Zilani chief scientist asked his team. "How much of their true knowledge did they hide from us?" The answer was becoming clear as more human devices failed and revealed their impossible complexity. Humans had always been far more advanced than they pretended. They had simplified their technology when working with aliens and hidden their true capabilities behind facades of primitive engineering. The Council had been so convinced of their own superiority that they never looked closely enough to see what humans were really doing. The Vorthak made the most disturbing discovery of all. They found archives in an abandoned human research station that contained theoretical papers on stellar manipulation and dimensional engineering. The research was decades old and written in casual academic language, as if moving stars was a simple engineering problem. "This is impossible," the Vorthak chief researcher declared. "No species can manipulate stellar formation. The energy requirements alone would destroy any civilization that attempted such projects." But the papers included detailed mathematical proofs and experimental data that showed humans had been testing these technologies in secret for years. They had built prototype stellar manipulators in the empty space beyond the galactic rim where no alien sensors could detect them. They had been preparing for this day long before the Council forced them to leave. The most frightening discovery was a casual reference to Project Exodus in one of the human research papers. The document mentioned preparations for establishing permanent human civilization beyond galactic boundaries using sustainable stellar engineering. It was dated 15 years earlier. Humans had been planning to leave the galaxy for over a decade. "They were never really trying to be part of our civilization," the Nethrim counselor whispered. "They were just waiting for us to give them a reason to go." The aliens finally understood what they had lost. Humans had not been primitive younglings learning from advanced mentors. They had been patient teachers working with stubborn students who refused to learn. They had maintained galactic civilization, not because they needed it, but because they thought the aliens deserved a chance to grow. Now that chance was over. The galaxy belonged to species that could not maintain what they had inherited. 1 year after the humans left, the galaxy was dying. Changmin-O recorded it all from his hidden observation post in the void between stars. What he saw would have been impossible to believe if he had not watched it happen day by day. The Nethrim were the first major species to face complete extinction. Their gas cloud bodies required precise atmospheric balance to maintain cohesion, and without human containment technology, they were literally falling apart. Changmin watched through long-range sensors as entire Nethrim cities dispersed into meaningless vapor. Millions of beings who had lived for centuries simply scattered into the wind. The few surviving Nethrim had retreated to their most protected homeworld, where ancient atmospheric processors still functioned. But even those machines were failing, without replacement parts. Changmin calculated that the last Nethrim would die within 6 months. A species that had ruled star systems for millennia was about to vanish because they had never learned to maintain their own life support. They are sending distress calls in 17 different languages, Changmin noted in his research log. They are offering to surrender their entire civilization to anyone who can help them survive. No one is answering. The Vorthak were dying more slowly, but just as surely. Their crystal reproduction cycles had been disrupted when the human harmonic generators failed. The new generation of Vorthak that should have been born this year simply could not form properly. Their crystal matrices were flawed and unstable. Most died within days of formation. Changmin observed Vorthak scientists desperately trying to repair their reproduction facilities. They had found fragments of human harmonic generators and were attempting to rebuild them using Vorthak crystal technology. But their efforts only made things worse. They did not understand that human harmonics used quantum resonance principles that crystal vibrations could not duplicate. The Vorthak are trying to use their natural crystal singing to replace human harmonic generators, Changmin wrote. They do not realize that their organic frequencies are completely wrong for their own reproduction needs. They are actually making it harder for new Vorthak to form. The irony was cruel, but perfect. The Vorthak had always believed their crystal singing was the most beautiful sound in the galaxy. They had dismissed human music as primitive noise. Now they were learning that their own voices were killing their children, while human technology had been keeping their species alive. Yuri Kim and her hidden human observers watched as the Zelani hive cities began to collapse. The insect beings had been trying to restart their atmospheric systems using their own technology, but they did not understand the complex chemistry involved. Their attempts to fix the air recycling had made the contamination worse. 3 more hive cities have been abandoned this week, Yuri reported to Human Command. The Zelani are trying to evacuate their populations to worlds with natural atmospheres, but most of their species cannot survive outside artificial environments. The Zelani had evolved in carefully controlled hive conditions for so long that they could no longer adapt to natural planetary atmospheres. They needed the exact chemical balance that human engineers had provided. Without it, they were slowly suffocating even in the open air of garden worlds. But the infrastructure collapse was only part of the disaster. The breakdown of galactic civilization was accelerating as species that had cooperated for centuries turned against each other in desperation. The Vorthak and Zelani had finally gone to war over the Kepler mining system. Both species needed the rare metals found there to attempt repairs to their failing life support systems. Neither side was willing to share resources when their own survival was at stake. The war was vicious and pointless, since neither species had the technology to actually extract the minerals they were fighting over. Both fleets are using weapons that were designed by human engineers 50 years ago, Yuri observed. Neither side understands how to maintain or improve them. They are fighting with obsolete equipment that breaks down faster than they can repair it. The war spread to other systems as desperate alien governments tried to claim any resources that might help them survive. Ancient treaties collapsed as species that had been allies for millennia betrayed each other for the chance to steal working technology. The galaxy was fracturing into warring fragments that grew weaker with each battle. Meanwhile, in the darkness beyond the galactic rim, human civilization was growing at an incredible pace. Wu Jin Park supervised the construction of the 5th artificial star system in just 12 months. Each system was designed from scratch, using principles that the Council had thought were impossible. The new stellar engineering techniques are exceeding all projections, Wu Jin reported to the Human Council. We can now create stable stars with custom energy outputs and controlled planetary formation. The latest system will support 10 million human colonists. Humans were not just building new worlds. They were designing entire solar systems to meet specific needs. They created young hot stars for high-energy research projects. They built old cool stars for peaceful agricultural worlds. They even constructed binary star systems that produced unique energy phenomena for advanced manufacturing. The human children born in these artificial systems would grow up in conditions that no natural evolution had ever produced. They would live on worlds where gravity and atmosphere and even the color of sunlight had been chosen by human engineers. They would inherit a civilization that was not limited by the random distribution of natural planets, but could create exactly what it needed. Dr. Jiwan Yang led the human scientific teams that were advancing at speeds that would have been impossible under council oversight. Without alien bureaucrats limiting their research, humans were making discoveries that revolutionized their understanding of reality itself. "We have successfully tested controlled dimensional folding," Jiwan announced to her research staff. "We can now compress space-time to create pocket universes for industrial manufacturing. The energy output is beyond anything we achieved in the galaxy." Human science was not just advancing, it was transcending the basic laws of physics that the council species still obeyed. Humans had learned to manipulate space and time and matter in ways that created new possibilities for civilization. They were becoming something that the galaxy had never seen before. Back in the dying galaxy, the council held its final meeting. Only 7 of the 12 original species still had representatives able to attend. The others had collapsed completely, or were too busy fighting for survival to spare ships for diplomatic missions. "We must make a formal apology," the lead Vorthak declared. Its crystal voice was barely audible through the stress fractures. "We must beg the humans to return and help us." "They will not answer our messages," the Nethrim representative whispered. Its gas cloud was so thin that it was almost invisible. "Perhaps they cannot hear us anymore," the Zilani counselor clicked weakly. "Our deep space sensors detect massive energy sources beyond the galactic rim. Something is building structures larger than star systems out there. It might be the humans." The aliens finally sent their most advanced scout ships to search the void between galaxies. What they found terrified them beyond words. Human civilization had not just survived the exile. It had evolved into something magnificent and impossible. The scout ships detected artificial star systems arranged in perfect geometric patterns. They found space stations the size of small moons connected by streams of controlled energy. They saw ships that moved faster than light without using any propulsion technology the aliens recognized. Most frightening of all, they detected structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Human engineering had advanced so far that they were building things that could not be properly observed with normal three-dimensional sensors. "This is not possible," the scout captain reported back to the council. "The humans have created technologies that violate basic physical laws. They are manipulating space-time itself like it was common building material." The council species that had dismissed humans as primitive younglings were now looking at a civilization that operated on cosmic scales. The beings they had treated like children had become something like gods in the short time since leaving the galaxy. But humans were not interested in ruling the galaxy anymore. They had moved beyond such limited ambitions. They were building something greater in the infinite darkness, where no ancient prejudices could constrain their dreams. The galaxy belonged to the aliens now. They could keep their crumbling civilizations and their dying worlds. Humans had found something better in the cold, empty spaces where only they had the vision to see possibilities. The Council sent one final desperate message toward the human constructions beyond the galactic rim. They offered complete surrender. They promised to make humans the supreme rulers of all galactic civilization. They begged for any help that might save their species from extinction. The message traveled through space toward the impossible structures that humans had built in the void. It was received and analyzed by quantum computers that processed information faster than biological minds could comprehend. Then it was deleted without being answered. Humans had more important things to do than save the people who had driven them away. 2 years after humanity left the galaxy, something impossible appeared in Council space. The massive object materialized without warning near the dying Vorthak homeworld. It was larger than anything the aliens had ever built, and it moved through space in ways that made their physicists weep with confusion. Sung-Ho Lim stood on the bridge of the construct and looked down at the crystal cities below. He had been chosen as the new human ambassador, but his role was very different from Ji-Hoon Kim's old position. Sung-Ho was not here to ask for anything or negotiate treaties. He was here to deliver a message. Signal the Vorthak leadership, he told his communications officer. Tell them we are ready to begin. The construct that carried him was one of Neon Song's greatest achievements. She had designed it using principles that the Council would never understand. The station existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously and could manipulate space-time, like ordinary matter. It was not just a ship or a building. It was a demonstration of what human engineering had become. Below them, the Vorthak were dying in their crystal cities. Their reproduction cycles had completely failed, and no new generation had been born in over a year. The few surviving adults were fracturing from stress and despair. Their once proud civilization was counting down its final days. The Vorthak leadership gathered in their broken council chamber to receive the human message. They expected threats or demands for surrender. What they heard instead was far more terrifying than any weapon could have been. We have come to offer assistance, Sung-Ho announced. His voice was calm and patient, like a teacher addressing confused students. Your species is dying because you never learned to maintain the systems that kept you alive. We will repair those systems as a gift. The Vorthak counselors made desperate sounds of gratitude and relief, but Seung-Ho was not finished speaking. We offer this help not because we owe you anything or because you have earned it. We offer it because we choose to. You will accept our charity and learn to live with the knowledge that your continued existence depends entirely on human kindness. The words hit the Vorthak harder than any military attack could have. They had once been masters of star systems who dismissed humans as primitive younglings. Now they were beggars who would survive only because their former subjects chose to pity them. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as more human constructs appeared near dying alien worlds. The ships that carried human engineers were marvels that defied every law of physics the Council thought they knew. They moved faster than light without creating energy signatures. They existed in multiple dimensions while remaining perfectly stable. They demonstrated technologies that the greatest alien scientists could not even begin to understand. Jae-hyun Ko had once been the human liaison to the Zilani hive cities. Now he returned as something far greater and more terrible. His ship materialized inside the dying atmosphere of the largest Zilani world, like a ghost stepping through walls. The insect beings who saw it arrive chittered in fear at the impossible sight. We will restore your atmospheric systems, Jae-hyun announced to the Zilani leadership. Your people will live because we allow it. Your civilization will continue because we choose not to let it end. The Zilani had no choice but to accept. Their species was already extinct in all but name. Without human intervention, the last hive cities would fail within weeks. They had to swallow their pride and accept charity from the beings they had once considered inferior. Human engineering teams began working throughout the galaxy to repair the systems that were keeping alien civilizations alive. But this was not the careful cooperation of the past. Humans worked alone using technologies that aliens could not comprehend or replicate. They fixed problems in hours that alien experts had struggled with for months. The work was precise and complete, but it came with an unspoken message. These systems would work perfectly as long as humans chose to maintain them. If humans ever decided to leave again, the aliens would die even faster than before. The galaxy's survival now depended entirely on human goodwill. Some alien species accepted the new reality with gratitude. The Nethram survivors gathered their remaining population on a single world that humans had terraformed specifically for their needs. They lived quietly and carefully, knowing that their existence was a gift that could be withdrawn at any moment. Other species could not accept the humiliation of depending on their former subjects. The Zilani military tried to seize human engineering, facilities, and reverse engineer the technology for themselves. They found that human devices simply stopped working when aliens tried to take them apart. The quantum processors that controlled them were designed to self-destruct if tampered with by unauthorized users. The Vorthak attempted to negotiate new treaties that would give them some measure of independence and dignity. They offered to share their remaining resources and knowledge in exchange for a partnership instead of charity. Human representatives listened politely to their proposals and then ignored them completely. Humans had moved beyond the need for alien resources or knowledge. But the most profound change was not in how humans treated the galaxy. It was in how they thought about it. Admiral Dong-Hyun Lee visited the Council space station where this had all begun 2 years earlier. The great chamber where aliens had once dismissed human concerns was empty now. Most of the Council species were extinct or dying. The few survivors were too busy accepting human charity to maintain their old government. It seems smaller than I remembered, Dong-Hyun observed to his aide. I used to think this place was the center of galactic civilization. The truth was that human civilization had outgrown the galaxy itself. They had built new star systems in the void between galaxies using technologies that created matter from pure energy. They had established colonies in pocket dimensions where space and time followed rules that humans had written themselves. They had transcended the limitations that bound other species to single planets or star systems. Nayeon Song stood in the control center of the greatest human achievement. She had designed a structure that existed across multiple galaxies simultaneously while remaining perfectly stable. It was not just a building or a space station. It was a demonstration that humans had learned to manipulate reality itself on cosmic scales. The new galaxy construction project is ahead of schedule, she reported to the Human Leadership Council. We should have a complete spiral arm finished within 5 years. The artificial physics we are implementing will allow for faster-than-light communication across the entire structure. Humans were not just building in space anymore. They were building space itself. They were creating new regions of reality where the laws of physics worked according to human specifications. They were becoming the architects of existence itself. The galaxy they had left behind was becoming irrelevant to human concerns. It was a small collection of dying civilizations that required occasional maintenance to prevent complete collapse. Humans maintained those systems not because they had to, but because they chose to be merciful to the beings who had once oppressed them. But human children born in the new constructs would never know what it meant to ask permission from aliens, who thought they were superior. They would grow up in pocket universes designed by human engineers. They would inherit technologies that could create new forms of matter and energy. They would live in civilizations that spanned multiple galaxies and operated on timescales measured in millions of years. One of those children asked her parent a question that would have been impossible in the old galaxy. Why do the aliens in the little galaxy look so sad when our ships visit them? Her parent looked out at the Milky Way spinning slowly in the distance like a toy that someone had forgotten. They are learning something important, he explained, gently. They thought the universe belonged to them because they were old and had rules. But the universe belongs to whoever has the wisdom to understand it and the courage to make it better. The child nodded and went back to her lessons in dimensional mathematics and stellar engineering. She would never have to sit at a table where she was not welcome. She would never have to beg for permission to dream great dreams. She would inherit a reality where humans were limited only by their imagination and their compassion. The galaxy watched in terror, not because humanity threatened them, but because humanity no longer needed them at all. The species that had dismissed humans as primitive younglings had been left behind by children who grew up to become something magnificent. And in the vast structures that humans built in the darkness between galaxies, new civilizations were being born that would make the old council seem like insects arguing over crumbs. Humanity had not just abandoned the table. They had built a better universe where everyone was welcome to sit as equals. The old galaxy could keep its ancient prejudices and dying traditions. Humans had found something infinitely more valuable in the cold, empty spaces where only they had been brave enough to look for possibilities. The future belonged to those who were willing to build it with their own hands rather than inherit it from others. And humanity had just proven that they were very good at building impossible things in places where no one thought anything could exist.